Imagine standing on your porch, sipping coffee, watching the smug HOA president sprint across your land, pursued by a pair of furious geese. That's exactly what went down when Linda decided she could bully me into ditching my trusty guard geese. What would you do if the person tasked with upholding rules broke the most fundamental one by trespassing on your property? 5 years back, I traded the chaos of city life for my dream home on the quiet rural edge of town. You know that rush when you finally find the place. This property had it all: serene surroundings, space for a garden, and just enough distance from neighbors for privacy without feeling cut off. Sure, it fell under an HOA's reach, but with nearly 2 acres, well above the 1-acre threshold for small hobby farming, the previous board didn't mind. They were decent folks who promised my veggie patch and handful of chickens wouldn't stir up trouble. Their vibe was simple: live and let live. I started modest with a few raised beds of heirloom tomatoes and peppers, then added a coop with 6 hens laying the tastiest eggs I'd ever had. My little haven was shaping up nicely. Then came Bella and Max, my Roman-tufted geese, and suddenly my property felt truly safe. Those two weren't just birds. They became my unlikely saviors and, believe it or not, local legends. Little did I know they'd end up protecting not just my land, but unmasking corruption festering right under our noses. Let me tell you about guard geese. These aren't your typical park ducks begging for scraps. Bella and Max are 20-pound powerhouses with sharp eyes that catch everything, wings that pack a surprising punch, and a territorial streak that'd shame most security tech. People don't realize geese have been guard animals for ages. Ancient Romans used them to sound the alarm against invaders. A flock even saved Rome from a sneaky nighttime raid once. Folks laugh when I drop that tidbit, until they see my duo in action. Last spring, my security cams caught 2 wannabe thieves trying their luck on my land in the same month. The first guy dropped his crowbar and bolted as Bella chased him down, wings flared, looking twice her size. The second made it halfway over my fence before Max's honk sent him tumbling back, leaving a shoe behind in his scramble. The sheriff came by, watched the footage, and laughed so hard he teared up. "You should rent these birds to the force," he quipped, though I could tell he was genuinely impressed. I didn't get them to be guards. Mind you, they started as chicks to help with yard work, nibbling weeds and pests. But their protective streak? That became their signature. My UPS guy now texts me before pulling up. "Geese locked down?" The neighborhood kids keep their distance, too, peering from the edge of my property, calling out, "Mr. Goose, Mr. Goose," hoping to spot Max's proud waddle or hear his bold honk. Those two turned into a local spectacle. Little did I know how clutch they'd prove when our HOA got a new boss. Everything shifted last summer when our longtime HOA president, Tom, a chill guy who'd served 8 years, retired. "Health stuff," he said, though it lined up perfectly with his move to a Florida condo. "Smart move, Tom." Enter Linda. Not her real name, but she fit the stereotype to a T. A 60-something woman with a platinum bob screaming manager complaint and outfits. Think white slacks and 3-inch heels. Wildly out of place on our gravel roads. Within days, violation notices rained down like confetti. Mailboxes unchanged for years. Non-compliant. Trash cans out too long. Cited. Garden hoses not coiled, just so. Busted. You name it, Linda flagged it. Her debut at the monthly meeting drew a packed house, everyone curious about this enforcement blitz. Linda stood tall at the podium, scanning us like a principal eyeing rowdy kids. "It's time," she declared with a theatrical flourish, "to restore standards and property values by purging the unsightly elements past leadership let slide." Her eyes locked on me when she said unsightly, and heads turned my way, some sympathetic, others relieved it wasn't them. I just smiled, figuring my hobby farm's approval papers would shield me. Boy, was I wrong. The fight for my feathered crew was about to kick off, and Linda had no clue what she'd stirred up. 3 days later, an official warning landed in my mailbox, stamped with the HOA's red logo. Inside, unauthorized livestock on property. I dug out my binder. Yeah, I'm old school with paper records, and flipped to the bylaws. They banned cows, pigs, and horses, but birds? Not a word. Better yet, the original developer docs, which trump HOA tweaks, greenlit poultry and waterfowl on lots over an acre. Mine was almost double that. I photocopied the key pages and called the HOA office. Linda picked up, her voice syrupy until I explained the poultry loophole. Then it turned icy. The boards reinterpreted the rules, she snapped. Your geese disturb people with their noise. They're a nuisance. I'd be glad to address formal noise complaints, I said coolly. Who filed them, and when? Her stumble was golden. Well, I'm complaining now. That's not how it works, I replied, keeping it civil. Bylaws need a documented process. Timestamps, evidence, witnesses. Don't lecture me on bylaws, she shot back. I wrote the enforcement guidelines. Which would be an amendment, I countered. And those can't override original covenants without a 2/3 vote. Dead silence. Then, you've got 14 days to ditch those birds, or it's daily fines. Click. I glanced out and saw Bella and Max peering through the window, like they sensed the storm brewing. I stepped outside, scratched their necks, and muttered, Don't worry, we've got the law on our side. But Linda didn't care about laws. She saw them as speed bumps on her road to control. What followed was pure mind games. Linda rolled out surprise inspections across the neighborhood, magically nailing only those who'd crossed her at meetings. My buddy Jack got dinged for a fence half an inch too tall, after 15 years. Sarah across the street caught heat for unauthorized vegetation. Wildflowers she'd grown forever for bees. My turn was coming. Sure enough, I caught Linda's fancy SUV creeping by, her zoom lens aimed at my yard. Amateur spy hour had begun. 2 days later, she showed up at my gate, clipboard ready for an official inspection. The second she touched the latch, Bella and Max unleashed their honk alarm, loud enough to wake the dead. Linda yelped and nearly fell into the ditch. Win number 1. Then came the certified letter, $100 daily fines for ongoing violations. I skipped the mail reply and prepped for the next board meeting, arming myself with bylaws copies and a legal opinion from my cousin, a real estate lawyer. At the meeting, I handed out my packets and said, I'd like to discuss improper enforcement that could land the HOA in legal hot water. The board squirmed as I laid out how cherry-picking rules was a lawsuit waiting to happen. Linda's face went beet red, and she tried to cut me off, but Jim, a retired contractor on the board, stepped in. We should review this before any fines, he said. The decision's made, Linda barked. Actually, Jim fired back. Enforcement needs a board majority, not just you. Her scowl as the meeting wrapped up without her win. Sweet victory number 2. Linda's iron fist style split our quiet community in two. Her crew, mostly newbies obsessed with property values, saw any quirk as a threat. The old-timers, who'd picked this spot for its rural charm, wanted reasonable freedom. Meetings turned into shouting matches over gardens, bird feeders, even wind chimes. But her war on me sparked a quiet rebellion. 3 neighbors secretly got their own geese, and Emily, the kindergarten teacher, started bringing her kids to see my educational farm birds, making any move against them a PR nightmare. Linda pushed for a special vote to tighten animal rules, sure she'd win and force Bella and Max out. I spent the week before canvassing neighbors with my docs, warning about the precedent. Voting night, the clubhouse was jammed. The tally fell 5 votes shy of the 2/3 needed. Linda's stunned silence as her plan tanked publicly. Victory number 3. She cornered me after, hissing, "This isn't over. Your geese won't last forever." It wasn't just a threat, it was war. Post-vote, Linda went sneaky. My cams caught her circling my place 6 times in a day, snapping pics. That night, I found footprints along my fence from a midnight prowler, designer boot prints I'd seen before. I beefed up my security with more cameras and motion lights. Next day, I ran into Linda at the mailboxes and mentioned the trespasser. Her shaky hands and weak excuse, "Just admiring your landscaping from the sidewalk," gave her away. At midnight, I asked, "With a flashlight?" She paled. I grinned. Upgraded my system, night vision, full coverage. Safety first. Victory number 4. The hunter was now the hunted. Then Grace, my elderly neighbor, dropped by with a pie and a story. Garden trinkets, gnomes, a weather vane, vanished after Linda's inspections. Was this more than a goose grudge? The puzzle pieces were stacking up, and Bella and Max were about to steal the show. Tuesday morning, mid-video call, their intruder honk blared, frantic, distinct. I muted my mic and peeked out. There was Linda, in my garden, snapping pics after climbing my fence. The nerve. My cams were rolling as Bella and Max sprang into action. Necks out, wings up, hissing. Linda didn't notice until they were close. Then, panic. She dropped her clipboard, papers flying, and ran straight into my yard, not out. Max nipped her pants, just a pinch, and she shrieked, stumbling in her heels through a mud puddle, white slacks now a muddy mess. "Call them off," she yelled. "Interesting," I shouted from the porch, "since you're trespassing on posted private land. Wonder how that'd play in court." She fumbled the gate open, dove out, and collapsed on the sidewalk. Hair wild, outfit trashed. "Those monsters attacked me," she wailed. "I'm suing." I held up my phone. "Sheriff's on the way. Got video of you climbing my fence. Trespassing's a crime here." Neighbors gathered, murmuring as Linda's HOA inspection excuse flopped. She sped off, leaving her clipboard behind. Victory number 5, and the biggest yet. 2 days later, an emergency HOA meeting was called. Word was it was about my dangerous animals. I showed up with footage and trespassing laws. But the VP, Mark, ran the show, not Linda. He dropped a bomb. For others, including a retired judge, caught Linda sneaking onto their lots. Then photos. A warrant search at Linda's place uncovered a shed stuffed with stolen neighborhood goods, gnomes, tools, Grace's weather vane, all tagged with dates matching her inspections. Our HOA pres was a thief, using her role as a front. The room exploded. Judge Harper confirmed Linda faced charges. My Geese had cracked open a crime ring. She was booted from the board, hit with lawsuits, and slunk off to a retirement spot with stricter rules than ours. The new board undid her nonsense, apologized, and even gave Bella and Max a certificate for busting her. They're neighborhood stars now, sporting tiny sheriff badges from the real deputies, who found it hilarious.